That's good.
Okay, it is 6:30. We will call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Van Kampen,
Here, yes.
Schnelly,
Here.
Bano,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Smithback,
Here.
Polda,
Here.
Nelson, and Molzon is out tonight.
Thank you. Move on to approval of minutes of February 5th, 2026. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Matthew, is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Under public appearances, I suspect everybody here is for an item that's on the agenda, so we're going to forego what's unsaid here, so we're going to move right on to unfinished business, none. New business. For discussion only, conceptual presentation from Viridian Homes, proposed new neighborhood development on Netherwood Road, Jenkins Connor property.
All right, these gentlemen brought their own presentations, so we're just gonna get it switched over to that desk here, and I'll let them introduce themselves and talk a
Yep.
little bit about
Yep.
the project once it gets settled. PowerPoint coach.
Yeah, we can get that. Okay. See if we can get. There we go. All right.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'll start off. My name is Matt Brink. I'm the Vice President of Land Development for Viridian Homes. It's very nice to be in front of you guys again. I've seen some of you I've seen for the first time. Really looking forward to presenting our concept for tonight. We obviously have Greenview Preserve under development now. Just wanted to give a quick update as to where we're at on that development, and then I'll kick it over to Brian. Greenview is really doing well for us. We're through phase 3 now. We're bringing phase 4 before you guys. We have 96 lots in the ground, and only 9 of those have not been dug so far. So we're seeing a very good momentum right now in the marketplace, all positive signs. Looking forward right now, and our phase 4, which will be coming forward this year, is a very large phase. It's 55 lots. So again, a lot of momentum here in Oregon, and really looking forward to presenting this, see how this kind of ties in with what we're looking to do at Greenview, and get your feedback tonight. So again, thank you very much, and I'll kick it over to Brian.
Sounds good. Well, Brian Munson with Vanderwall and Associates. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to talk about some of the concept stages of the Jenkins Connor property. So kind of like we start with all of our projects, and some of this you might remember from the last time we were talking about Greenview. So we'll go through quickly, but looking at a neighborhood as more than just a sum of parts. It's housing variety. It's ways to create opportunities for residents to find homes within the community, regardless of where they are in their housing journey. Really trying to find ways to create community by creating diversity in that neighborhood so that you have options for people to find a variety of different housing types within the neighborhood. And really focused in on that as a way to create vibrancy through design, both offering many different floor plans, elevations, configurations, price points, placements, and really seek ways to create community through interaction of folks in different backgrounds, and have diverse parks, open space opportunities, and really create a neighborhood intentionally through the design and construction of the project. Of course, underlaying all of that is sustainability, knowing that, of course, in this case, to our north, we have very sensitive environmental facilities. Now, this property is designed to really approach stormwater very carefully. We're at the very early stages of it, but taking that conscious step to make sure that it's done right. We know that this has some enclosed basins on it. We know that there's close sensitive areas. We want to make sure that all of that is embedded into the design of the concept right at the start and move forward from that as kind of a building block. But finally, as Matt mentioned, it's a process of experience. This isn't a theoretical exercise. It's informed by many other neighborhoods, but also our knowledge of the market through the implementation of the Greenview Preserve neighborhood, of course, which looks like this today. Maybe not quite as sunny as these photos were, maybe a little bit more green, but we'll get there eventually. It's coming soon. But you can see really some of the build out of this neighborhood, and it's an important marker because it informs a lot of what we're going to be proposing within the Connor Jenkins property. which then gets us, of course, to the project itself. In addition to our guiding principles, we always do our homework. We start with what is the adopted plan for the site and what does the site tell us. So in this case, located in the northwest corner of the village within the comprehensive plan, identified for planned neighborhood. You can see here some of the environmental features to the north, some of the new neighborhoods immediately adjacent to the south. You've got some of the rural subdivisions on either side, but then of course Netherwood Road cutting across the frontage on the property. Looking a little bit closer at, you can see here some of the other components that we're looking at. Of course, the Rotary Trail, one on the north side of the property, offering opportunities to create some connectivity into the adjoining neighborhoods, but also the community through the development of this property. And then finally, looking closer at the site itself. And you can see, water is a very critical component. We know to our south, there are enclosed basins. To the west, most of the water eventually will either drain to the west or some portions to the north. So we want to make sure that we're acknowledging all of that as we design this site. It's a fairly flat site until you get right up to the northern edge of the property. It begins to fall away to the north and northeast. So then, the concept. What you see here is an initial look at a blend of different housing types within the neighborhood, transitioning from the Netherwood frontage up to the houses that back to Swan Pond to the north, or Lake Barney, depending on which map you want to look at or refer to it. The green spaces you see here are largely the kind of placeholder components of looking at the stormwater management. We have been out on site just this last week into next week doing soil borings to make sure we have a very strong understanding of the soil types on the site so that the stormwater management is sized appropriately so that we can meet the infiltration requirements. We've had some conversations with CARP-C, with city staff, really trying to understand how to approach this site in an environmentally sensitive way and making sure that we have the facilities designed into the neighborhood to make sure we meet that. In addition, looking at how we're going to serve the site. We're anticipating a lift station in the northeast corner of the site that will lift sewer back to Peterson Trail. We're looking at potentially 2 water loop connections across Netherwood to the Highlands and Netherwood neighborhood to the south so that we have all the utilities necessary to serve this site. But also looking at a complete street grid that goes throughout the site with walkable streets, sidewalks on both sides, looking at ways to route a trail corridor through from the existing park just to our south up to the Rotary Trail so that there's an additional access point to the Rotary Trail rather than just kind of where we're today at the beginning and the western terminus. So really excited about opening up another connection point to the community. Looking closer at kind of what that means, again, it's a unique site. While we don't have multifamily, there's a typo left in there, my apologies. We do see this as an opportunity to have a full spectrum of housing, from first-time home buyers, move-up, luxury estate buyers, active adult downsizing. So a little bit broader range of housing is available on this property than when compared against Greenview Preserve. But we want to preface that by stating, like Greenview Preserve, our focus is on giving people choices of housing and really trying to offer that full spectrum of housing within the neighborhood. And again, as always, with Viridian being the builder-developer, they've got control over the architecture, the design of the site, the implementation of the site, some of the details of the engineering, all the way down to the key of the house is embedded in the design of this project. To describe what we're looking at from a single-family standpoint, we've got 135 carriage lane access single-family homes. And that offers, even within that category, a wide range of floor plans and price points within those homes. So you'll find many different types of houses on the design of the project. And really comparable living space to what you see on the front-loaded houses. Again, as we talked before, effectively what we've taken is the garage from the side, move it to the back. Yes, there is a differential in yard space, but with that comes a big differential in price point. And that's a really important piece because we do see the need to try to deliver attainable housing for the market without any subsidy so that folks can get into that housing market. Or on the other side of the lens, if they're looking to have a smaller yard, possibly downsizing, there are opportunities for those houses within this neighborhood. The front-loaded conventional single family, we have 116 homes in that category. And again, much like the the alley-loaded single-family home, there's a broad spectrum of housing types within that, including price points. We do recognize that on the north rim of this site, there's great opportunities for housing that's gonna enjoy that permanent open space to the north. We'll have access to the trail corridor there, but also the woodlands, the wetlands, and the views beyond, which are gonna offer opportunities for some move-up housing. But then as you transition to the south, closer to the alley-loaded housing, we have a variety and transition in the front load as well. A nod to that is that really to create that synergy between the very different housing formats, we look at the architectural design of not just the alley homes and the conventional homes as independent, but look at how they interact with each other, looking at things to really design this in a way that focuses on the residents and the front doors, things like recessing the garage from the front of the house, pulling the porch to the front of the house, really trying to make sure that as you look down a street, you're cognizant of the residents, not just where they store their cars. And that's a really important architectural component. With that, of course, we do have opportunities for parks and open space and recreation. As we said, we're very excited about the connection opportunity for the Rotary Trail. We know we're going to have quite a bit of stormwater management, and as we design this more, our goal would be to have an opportunity for a small tot lot centered in the middle of the project, largely because immediately south of Netherwood, there already is a neighborhood park that's well serves the surrounding area, and we'd want to see opportunities to bring open space that accent that rather than duplicate. And of course, as always, we will work closely with the village on what the design of that looks like. But for now, at the concept stage, our focus is making sure we have enough room for the stormwater management and then trying to find room for some of the park components. Because as you said, on a flat site, given the enclosed basins around us, we want to make sure that that stormwater management's done right up front and embedded into the design of this neighborhood. And so that's a very quick overview. And I'm sure there's questions along the way, but again, we're happy to be here tonight early in the process. We'll have quite a few additional conversations as we go forward and opportunities, of course, to enhance and refine this plan as we move forward, but welcome the conversation tonight.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, comments?
You kind of covered the single-family offerings. What do you have for, duplex and multifamily within this design?
Yeah, so at this point, we ran the concept without having the twin homes. So at Greenview, there's 28 twin homes, and they're moving pretty well. But this time, just given where we're seeing the market going and the demand for just the single-family housing, we thought we'd take a chance and design this one without the twins. It's a little unique for Veridian, but just given what we're seeing in the marketplace, we felt this would be a good project to bring this forth and get feedback on and just see how this is received. So yeah, just really good momentum in the marketplace right now on the single family side.
Are you, again, looking at 5-foot side yard setbacks?
Yes, so what we'd be looking at is really taking the framework from Greenview Preserve and using that similar approach through the plan unit development to create the framework for this project.
That will be on the smaller lots, or any lot. Is it any lot will have that?
The way Greenview Preserve is put together, it's on any lot. Now, what you'll find on some of the wider lots is sometimes that will not be utilized in all cases. So there are opportunities where some of the larger lots have larger side yards. But on many of the smaller lots, yes, it would use the 5-foot side yards.
I live real close to Greenville, and I'll be very honest with you, I'm not real happy, or I shouldn't say happy, I'm not impressed, or I don't really particularly like the 5-foot. It's very crowded. I do walk through there quite a bit and look at the construction. So that in itself is, for me, I'd like us to be able to talk to you about that a little bit on any new development. I'm not saying 10-foot, but I'm saying let's talk about it before we go proceeding. The other thing I have a concern about is that this is on the far west side of our northern edge. I realize that, but we have some properties between there and the village limits, as you're fully aware. You've got a property that I understand they're not willing to sell right now. It's almost 200 acres. You also have an unsewered subdivision that's adjacent right directly to the east of this proposed location. My concern with that is that somewhere along the line, we're gonna have to face the situation or the issue, whether or not they're gonna annex to the village of Oregon. Mm-hmm. And at that time, whether it comes to the point where we actually make a move to require them to annex, or they do it on their own fruition, there's some cost associated with that as far as their utilities out there. And I think we should be talking about that prior to annexing any property to the west. Because it's not a problem right now, but somewhere in the future, and probably not that far from now, it's gonna be a concern. And I think the village should be aware of that and should certainly look at that situation so that they're not facing some kind of issues maybe 10 years down the road at the most. I won't be sitting here at that time, but it's a thing that we really should talk about because the village, you know, we don't need the Village of Oregon and some property owners having some adversities going on. So that's something we should consider.
And Greg, Lauren, I know that you and I spoke about that comment a couple days ago too. So we did talk a little bit about kind of what, obviously there's a lot of unknowns at this point, but what potentially that phasing could look like or what that might look like to bring a unsewered subdivision into the village. Lauren, I don't know if you want to talk about just some of your initial thoughts with some of our consulting engineers about what that could look like and implications of development in the surrounding area.
Sure. So, with respect specifically to the utilities, village ordinances require a property in the village to connect to sewer and water if such utilities are available to them. So, as far as I'm aware, we cannot require an unsewered subdivision to, on their own dime, extend village facilities into their subdivision and then connect. So really, if those were ever to come in, it would be a village policy decision as to whether the village wanted to extend those utilities in. And then at that point, if there was some kind of agreement to be made with those property owners that you shall connect within 5-10 years. So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to the utility part of this. That I don't think would lock in these property owners to sewer and water right away upon any kind of annexation.
But there will be a time when they have to, when they do have to extend their services into their property, correct?
I'll
If
be
they-
honest.
If they were to annex and,
Well, I mean, it would be likely a conversation between the village and the neighbors. And my guess would be you'd start to see septic systems fail before you got to that point. And so that's typically how we see pushes from neighborhoods like this to come in, is that wells start to fail, septic systems start to fail, and there is a desire for the neighbors to connect in. So something like this, honestly, it would be a discussion for whoever is sitting in, the village board trustees chairs at that time, but I think there would be quite a bit of time likely between now and when all the pieces fall into line to, if you want to require these property owners to connect. There's a lot of steps between those.
well, there is. But what I'm saying is the village has to realize that this is gonna happen, it will happen. And that, if you're gonna develop, first of all, I guess technically, they're still in the town of Oregon. Okay, because of the property to the north. Okay, so, because that is not, I believe the property to the north is owned by the state?
Just north of that neighborhood is the Alpine Dairy property.
To the
And
north.
then to
To
the
the
north
north?
is Alpine Dairy, and then there's, just north of these properties is, Department of Corrections and, the Fish and Wildlife, US Fish and Wildlife is the 40 to the north of kind of the western side of the neighborhood. So, but yeah, those are all still town, and then I think the next 40
Okay.
to the north becomes Fitchburg.
When I looked at that again, so you're saying, maybe I missed that, because I thought Alpine Dairy, their western border ended at what would be the eastern border of this property, not going north.
They do, yeah.
Yes,
If
it
you can
does.
maybe point
Yeah.
that out, Brian.
So,
yeah.
this is the Alpine Dairy property.
Right.
These two parcels right here, they do come where we've got a road
Okay,
stub
gotcha.
extended, and this is Department of Corrections, and this is where the Fish and Wildlife starts to go
Okay.
to the west.
So, what I'm trying to say, well, not what I'm trying, what I am saying then is that, okay, Alpine Dairy, when Alpine Dairy wants to, and someday it will, annex, now you've created an island. Now you've created a property that, how are you gonna handle that? I know it's down the road, and I don't believe in kicking the can down the road. If you're gonna do things, let's look at it and see how it's gonna affect us in the future, because what we're opening up to future people is a possible situation. Let's talk about it. Is there a way to solve it? Maybe, maybe not. Or do we just proceed and just ignore it until somebody else has to deal with it? And I don't believe in that. Okay? That's where I'm going with it.
I think to Greg's point, maybe, and I'm sorry, we'll get to your project.
Well, you're right.
I just think that, maybe it is something that is a policy that we start to look at, because as Oregon continues to grow, we're gonna run into this rural development intersection more and more.
Yeah.
So, we're not gonna solve it tonight, but on your project, let's talk.
I'm sorry, I guess I just went the wrong direction.
No,
But I mean,
no,
it
no.
had to do with the project, and it's, and my initial comment about lot sizes and not necessarily lot size, but side yard setbacks and things are certainly something I want to be involved with, whatever else, but I have my own personal opinion, so.
And if I could speak to that just briefly, part of the reason why we utilize the lot sizes in the yards we do is part of that delivery of attainable housing. If you look at Greenview Preserve, and there's a perfect case right here. If you compare the lots here on the north side of Netherwood, they're effectively alley access lots. They have slightly larger side yards, slightly wider lots. The average price of those houses is $500,000. Compare that against the smaller lots in Greenview Preserve with the smaller side yards. We're able to deliver lots in the low fours. So it is a function of the implementation of the project. By having the more lots, having the more homes, we can spread that cost for the same length of road across additional houses and then incrementally bring the price point down on those houses.
I understand it, but you're telling me those are affordable houses.
I wish they were more affordable.
I'm just saying, because I'll be honest with you, when you came to us with Greenview, the price point was $329,000. And I don't think any of those lots have gone out there, with the homes have gone for less than $400. That's not my position to even question. That's your business. I have nothing to do with that. I get it. It's market bearing. I get that. I just want to say that I'll be honest with you, I walk out here, I could mow their lawns with a kitchen shears.
Yep. Well, as someone who lives on a 32-foot, 114-year-old lot, there are choices, certainly. And I'd agree with you. There are choices that the residents will make.
Okay.
A lot of times what we found though is those choices are driven by price. I wish we could deliver them more attainably. But the world we live in, unfortunately, I've been at this long enough to know when I started on projects, we used to talk about streets at $200 a linear foot.
Yeah.
They're $1,000 a linear foot if you're getting a price discount. So, and that's just one price. Would we prefer to be able to deliver them more attainably? Yes. It's really hard to do in today's market, from cost of labor, cost to construct, everything across the board has continued going up. But what we can do, again, is look at the format. Try to find a way to be as efficient as we can with the land we do develop while still giving people choices. The alley loaded lots are certainly not for everybody. Totally understand. But by offering choices within a neighborhood and trying to do that as efficiently as we can spread that cost burden out and offer opportunities for folks to interface with the neighborhood and create a healthy neighborhood. The other thing about this is it's certainly not going to happen overnight. It's going to take multiple years to work our way through this.
Okay.
So there are going to be conversations that continue. As you said, the long-term extension of utilities. While we don't create any islands with the development of this site, we recognize that it needs to fit into the context around us. That's why you see the connection to the east, the Alpine, and also a future connection to the west, as requested from staff, so that if the properties to the west of us develop, we've offered a dense network of street connections, utility extensions, and sidewalk connections.
Okay. I'm still gonna talk to you about side yard.
Appreciate it.
When you came through at the last project, I believe that you asked for some flexibilities from our standards for road widths for sidewalks?
We don't believe sidewalks, no, we've
Okay,
got
so
5-foot
road
sidewalks
width,
on both
just
sides.
road widths?
Yeah.
Would you be looking to do the same thing here on some of on the roads or not?
Potentially, again, we haven't gotten into the construction level details yet. You know, we're very cognizant of again, cost, and road width is a function of that. But at the same time, we're also cognizant of how roads get used. We wanna make sure that the on-street parking incidents, we know from looking at all of our neighborhoods, we do constant studies to look at the on-street parking demand in our neighborhoods. But we know our residents have guests that come, Amazon comes, pizzas come, and they park vehicles in the streets as well sometimes. So we wanna make sure that those street designs are appropriate based on the density next to it. So as we look at this neighborhood, we'll get further into that dialogue to look at individual street segments based upon the houses that abut it and make sure that it's right sized for those houses.
The homes that are facing Netherwood,
Mhm.
are they literally the fronts of the homes facing Netherwood?
Yes,
So if I'm visiting,
yep.
what do I do?
Well, we've had some conversations with staff about that. So we're proposing several things for that. First off is to increase the front yard setback and pull the houses a little bit further back, an additional 20 feet potentially on that frontage. That gives us opportunities both for landscape and buffer transitions to the houses, but also in talking with staff, we'd like to explore the opportunity to institute a parking lane on that side of the house. So that on the north side of Netherwood, there would be on-street parking. We would widen the street to incorporate that. Because we recognize if the house is gonna face the street, that's where guests are gonna come. That's where Amazon's gonna come. We don't want them parking in that drive aisle. Because as much as we'd like to stop Amazon from doing that, they do what they do. So we are in conversation right now about what the cross-section of Netherwood would look like, but it would transition from what's a rural cross-section today to an urban cross-section, and we're looking at the potential for some on-street parking for that.
To something Greg touched on, I would, and you discussed, the price point is something that is a concern. I've got a son and daughter that are looking at that, trying to get into a home thing. So I'm empathetic and it's personal for me. So I would encourage you to explore duplexes, twin homes. You know, we're going through this later in this evening about ADUs. Is there anything that could be incorporated into your plan to make them a possibility as part of a development? Anything that you could incorporate to try to bring down some of those home costs? And I get it, you know, it's a numbers game. I get the 5-yard setback, 5-foot setback on the side, I get it. I don't like it either, but I get it, you know, everything is just trying to get drilled down to get it into what is considered an economic price point. So, and I think that to that, trying to do 2 duplexes, 4plexes, something like that, row houses as an option or an alternative, where there's absolutely no side yard. Just explore different modes of housing options to try to drive down some of the costs to under 400,000. So, so that's one thing I had. I know that it's conceptual. I'm confused. I'm not an engineer. You said there's a lift station in the northeast part of the site?
Yep.
Okay, now I'm confused
That's a
because
low
that
area.
seems like a really, you know, I don't get it. It's
It's a low area.
a
Yeah.
long way to go.
It is. To speak to that, that is the low point in the site.
Right.
So we're able, so in talking with staff, long-term, this is intended to be a temporary lift station,
Got it.
such that when Alpine Berry to the east develops and extends sewers in this direction, that lift station can be taken offline. So by having it in that northeast corner, that's the lowest point on the property, we can pick up all of the site and then bring it back to where there's currently sewer at Peterson Trail. That's the concept. There's a lot of studies that we're gonna have to do to get to that concept, to make sure that there's downstream capacity, that the grades work, but that's kind of what we're looking at right now. That's why the lift station is located in that northeast corner. Yes, we'd love it if it was a little bit closer, a shorter run to get to it for the first phases, but in this case, gravity wins. And so we've gotta make sure we have the utility to do that.
Thank you for explaining it in simple terms so I can get it. I think that's all I've got right now. The homes facing Netherwood is a concern. I'm glad that you're considering that. Again, encouraging you to explore different price points and options for housing. That's it for me.
I remember the last time the village had significant flooding. A lot of the water came from the wet area to the north through that space right to the dairy right
Right.
there.
Here,
So I want to make sure that that's a thing.
yes.
And developing the property to the east would be the best way to take care of that probably. But the village, that's a village thing more than this development. I don't think this development's not going to add to that, but
They can't.
Yeah.
it's a
That's
a
our new
spot that I
ordinance.
know has been, it was basically a river through there for a long time.
Yeah, and the way the grades on this site are, you can't see it on the screens, obviously, but this is quite a bit lower than even by the time you get to this first intersection. So this site is high and dry of all of that component, but it contributes to the watershed. And hence the long discussion about stormwater management that we've been having and will continue to have to make sure that it's done in a way that appropriately treats it and infiltrates as much as we can.
And I live in Greenview Preserve, and I have a
You do?
5-yard setback, and I appreciate that I don't have all that grass to mow. It was a choice, obviously, but
Yep.
appreciate that you can't, like, you know, the windows aren't lined up in houses. I can't see inside my neighbor's
Okay.
house or anything like that, so
Excellent.
it's a choice, and it's a market-driven decision, so just my perspective to consider.
We'll agree to disagree.
That's fine.
I just want to ask, maybe Lauren even a question. We've talked about how they're going to have some of those higher watershed standards and some of the, are we designing to what we think the future standards are going to be as we're looking at this, or?
So that's a really good question, and it's one that really all of Dane County has been struggling with for at least since 2018, so 7 years. What we're working with CARP-C to kind of figure out what the appropriate standards out here would be. I think as a starting point where we've kind of landed is we are likely going to take the standards that the Highlands of Netherwood on that northern part had to meet with that enclosed depression and use those as kind of our base minimum case so that we make sure that we're not impacting, you know, kind of anything around that. Now, as they mentioned, there are quite a few enclosed depressions in there, and per Dane County ordinance, those do have to meet higher standards, particularly on the infiltration side, than your typical stormwater management plan. So, yeah, kind of a combination of those already codified requirements and then working off what past people in our seats put together for that Highlands neighborhood is how we're gonna at least start approaching it.
And building off of that, a typical neighborhood that we've designed throughout Dane County has about 8% of the site in stormwater management. This is currently designed at 12%. So we're already trying to factor in that need for additional standards, space to do it right, and we'll continue to work with staff to work through that.
I'm just looking, you have that property, the one property that you're encompassing on the north side of Netherwood. That would be in the village at that point.
No,
Isn't it?
not
Is it across the
necessarily.
street? Isn't it across the street within the village or no?
No.
That's your property.
No,
That's your
you can see
property,
here, so on the western edge of the Highlands and Netherwood, this line right here is the current municipal
so-
boundary.
Got it. Okay, all right. I'm looking at Onyx Hut, I'm sorry. At property owners. Okay, thank you.
Greg, I just had a couple other
Sure.
notes, other things you might be wondering about or just catching up on some of our conversations. You know, obviously Veridian's been meeting with staff over the last couple of weeks and this has already been revised a number of different times based on comments about utilities or the road connections. We did try to, in this latest concept, they've minimized the access points to Netherwood, not wanting to have more entrances there than necessary, so there's been some consolidation there and across the street on Peterson. I don't know if you kind of talked through that, but there's obviously a property right across the street on Netherwood from Peterson Trail. And so if and when that property would be able to change ownership, there might be an opportunity to expand that to a 2-lane road and have that be another entrance to the neighborhood. They talked a little bit about, we've been talking about this, what the new section of Netherwood Road could look like. Is this both sides, north and south, for this stretch would likely be, village control. And I know Laura and her team have been talking about what that would look like, reducing the speed limit, things like that too. But just to remind you all, in case you weren't aware, for properties that really front and access Netherwood, Jefferson, and Lincoln Road, we do have a plan in place that was put together by Ruker Milky, our consulting engineers, that looks at developable acreage and has a dollar amount kind of based on frontage and developable acreage. So it generates a fee that's required, and it's a 50-50 split for kind of estimated road improvements on those 3 roads. So long story short, there's a fee collected anytime a development is done on any of those roads. So phasing and timing and, length of what gets improved when is all obviously details to cover later, but that would be something with annexation that we would be collecting at that time, would be improvements for the cost of improvements, or kind of a agreement for them to do part of a project to improve Netherwood Road and allow the development to take place. Also, we've talked about a traffic impact analysis or some kind of traffic study to make sure that distances from other entrances and speed limit, other things like that would be adequate and appropriate, and talked about kind of what the bounds of that study would be. And then just also wanted to note, as Brian mentioned, there's a lot of land for stormwater and a small park area currently sketched in, not really at this point delineated yet how much is park, how much is stormwater, but as you might remember from like Greenview Preserve, there's quite a bit of park land dedicated. There's 3 parks within that neighborhood. So whenever a developer chooses not to dedicate the acreage required for parkland, they would be paying a fee in lieu of parkland dedication. That goes into something called the Parkland Acquisition Fund. So that is placed in a pot of money that can only be used to purchase new land for parks. It can't be used to maintain existing parks. So I'm not sure where that account sits today, because we've had other developers, not recently, but generally most folks are dedicating parkland within the neighborhood, but sometimes it does happen that they have that fee. So that's where that parkland kind of loss would be going into that fee and be put into that fund, and that's what that can be used for. So.
All right.
I'm still kind of struggling with this Netherwood thing, I'll be honest. What is, if you had the crystal ball staff, what would Netherwood look like as Oregon continues to develop? Can you relate it to something in the village that we would be able to reference to? 2-lane, 4-lane, 6-lane divided?
So probably the best analogy is a street that does not yet exist, unfortunately. What we're likely looking at is a 2-lane roadway with parking lanes on each side, curb and gutter, of course, so an urban cross-section, and then likely at this point a multi-use or bike path along that southern edge to link up with the path that's in the Highlands, and then a sidewalk along the northern edge.
You give it some thought to?
Yep.
Almost like,
Right away
I guess like
currently to do
Netherwood
that?
on the other side,
Well,
right?
it's,
why
yeah,
it's
there's some,
on-street parking, but
there might be
doesn't
some,
have the trail.
Yeah, right now across the face of the project, the right of way is at 80 feet. So
Okay.
there's sections when it goes back into the town where the southern edge section has not been dedicated to that standard, but that is what we're designing towards.
yeah, okay. Okay, so you've given us a conceptual idea. I'm not sure if I'm not in a position to say anything about
Well, it's concept, so.
this
It's just for
concept.
discussion.
So is there anything else anybody wants to say? I got a quick question for Viridian since I got their audience here. Greenview Preserve. There's supposed to be a park in the first part of your development. The land's there. When are you gonna do the park?
So the one on the east side, the main,
Yes.
that will
Be
be.
the southeast part of your development.
Yep, so we will be looking at that as early as this year to bring it up. Yep,
I got neighbors asking
yeah.
questions.
Are you
yeah.
talking about the one that backs up to Richards Road?
Yep,
So some of that's already in, there's the trail and the trees are there.
well, no, there's no trees.
I've got a map.
Well, you're talking, I'm
Go
sorry, way to
back.
the east, yes, it's partially.
You talking about the, okay. you're
I'm
about the
talking
one-
right off of Richards Road, because Richards Road tees into, Perry Parkway.
Yep. So the park to the east.
That park that's right there, that the trees that this lady across the street said was gonna be there, that's, every time I see her, she's on me.
The southern, yeah,
Oh,
he's talking
this
about,
one?
yeah, the phase
Yeah,
two
because
one.
when the day you guys went in and tore all those trees out that were back there that were no good, she was storming across the
Trails
street.
in.
Yeah, trails in.
Okay, so that's gonna be done something this year. Okay, fine. So I'm sorry to go off the,
That's
but
okay.
as long as I had an eye.
And then the playground, I know we haven't accepted it, completely, but the park that was in phase one, that
Yep.
playground is in.
Oh, yeah, I
haven't
know,
been
it
up
was in the
there
middle
yet.
of nowhere for a while, but now it's a nice little playground, it really is, it's very nice. Now we got some homes nearby. Okay, anything else, folks? Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 6B, review and possible approval of resolution 26-03, recommending urban service area amendment.
Okay, well, Rich gets that back up here on the screen. So this is obviously related to the property we were just speaking about, the Jenkins Connor property that Viridian has under contract. So, they are not currently in the urban service area, so if you haven't been through this process before, CARPC, the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, controls where municipalities can serve development with public water and sewer. And there's a month, usually like a 6 to 9 month process that's gone through with a lot of maps that are created. We usually work with our planning consultants, Vanderwall, to create those maps, and then it's submitted. The village is the applicant, but it's kind of on behalf of the developer. The developer pays for all of the staff consultant time, review costs, things like that. So the first step is planning commission and village board just adopting a resolution to agree to start working on that application. Again, it's on the developer's dime. In the past, the most recent one we've done was a urban service area amendment for Autumn Ridge Phase 3. It also included at the time what was shown as Phase 4 and 5, kind of on the southern end of the Foxborough neighborhood. So we did that, the village did that CARPC process, the urban service area amendment process, alongside preliminary plat, final plat, zoning approvals, annexation, ordinance and agreement, all that negotiation. So it's kind of run alongside that. So by the time that CARPC did their approvals, village approvals were not too far behind. So I know there was a question just about kind of timing, and is this jumping the gun, or is this kind of typically how it's done? And I'm just letting you know, kind of in the past, in my time here, we've run these alongside our village approvals. It's up to CARPC if they decide it meets all the requirements for, protecting environmental corridors and ensuring we have the capacity within our wastewater treatment plant to handle the development. So that's kind of a third-party review. This is again just saying you can move forward with preparing the application materials, meeting with CARPC staff, et cetera. But all of our normal processes for plat review and zoning and neighborhood meetings and things like that will still be to come as well on our side.
Okay.
So kind of dumbing it down for me. We do this on behalf of the developer, and the developer has an accepted offer, I'm assuming loaded up with contingencies. If you're, done it before, you're gonna do that. So is that right?
Correct. We are saying we are basically consenting to potentially having our village urban service area amended. A developer can't say, hey, I'm gonna do this without the municipality's consent. So that's why we are the applicant. It's our urban service area boundary that would be adjusted.
well, your comments made were that typically it's done alongside or with, more or less at the same time,
Concurrently,
we go
yeah.
through the development process of the preliminary plats, the final plats, et cetera, annexation, et cetera. So why are we doing this now?
So this, again, typically it's about a 6 to 9 month process from starting to create all of the maps and get all the information about the development and demand and things like that to the time that CARPC would potentially approve an urban service area amendment. So this is again just saying we're at least open to this, concept. We're open to this development coming into the village. Obviously, there's still a lot of review, annexation. The village holds all the cards there. So if there's something that we want to request of the developer, it's at the board's discretion whether they want to annex a property or not. So that's kind of the ultimate card, especially with properties coming into the village. But it's starting that process so that, if it does take 9 months and it takes 9, 12 months, whatever, to go through all the village approvals, that would kind of maybe all get wrapped up this winter so that potentially development could start in the springtime.
So you're saying we've just agreed to this development?
There's a lot of other approvals that are
I
still
understand that,
to
but
be.
What I'm trying to say is that I'm thinking we're being a little premature. Again, that's just my view. I'm thinking, why are we doing this? Because we haven't really gone down the road with this. We've had a conceptual view tonight for the first time, and now we're gonna go proceed with getting urban service area. Yes, sir. Typically, we don't let you talk, but we're going to.
That's okay.
I know that, that's fine.
If I could shed some light on it. As Lee said, there's a couple key pieces to it. First off, it is on Viridian's dime. They will be paying for all the costs to do.
We know that.
But it's one of many steps. To go from where we are today as a concept plan, as you said, to go to plating, zoning, annexation, urban service amendment is on par with those other steps. What we've tried to do is work with the village to bring it all together at one point so that all of the information is available for the community to review prior to finalizing the CARPC action and any of the other subsequent actions. But they all have to happen before any project moves forward. So it all kind of is one chain of review with multiple steps. It's one of the steps that does tend to take the longest. And so by starting on the process of drafting the application, getting authorization to then submit the application will come further down the line. But it starts with drafting the information, working with CARPC to develop the application, which I'm not involved with. Sonia in my office would be involved with on behalf of the village. We keep those roles separate intentionally. But that way, the information is available so that if this project continues to move down the line through the many other steps, they all start to fall in sequence. But they're all knit back together in that if the project doesn't go forward, there are opportunities whereas the village could say, okay, the project didn't go forward, we don't want the application for urban services to go forward. So there are a lot of gates along the way and quite a few meetings in the process, but it all comes together in a kind of fairly complex timeline, this being kind of that first gate for the urban service amendment piece.
The other thing I was gonna add is, in my time here, I've seen that the CARPC review process might request some significant changes to the plan, and so it would be inefficient, for maybe the village to be led down the path of this is what this is gonna look like, neighborhood, et cetera, to have approvals, plat approval or something in place, and then at a later time, CARPC comes and says, nope, that's not gonna work for us, we're gonna wanna see a significant change here. So by, again, kind of having the review processes mirror each other, again, approvals are at the very, very end, so there's still that, you guys still hold a lot of power and cards and a lot of influence over these decisions too, but that any changes that are recommended, whether it's from the village side or CARPC, can kind of be incorporated as the plan is getting, to a more final state throughout, the months of design and review.
Okay, my question is gonna still stand. Have we ever done it? Have we ever had a conceptual plan in here and then proceed immediately with CARPC, request for CARPC approval? Has that ever been something we've done in the village? I'm just trying to be consistent with what we do so that, there's no, we
Yeah.
are consistent in the future.
Yeah, I'd have to look back. It was probably 21 when we did the urban service area amendment, I believe, with on Ridge.
That was gonna be my question. That,
Yeah.
I was here, so it would have been 22 or 20, it would have been 22, I think.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
So yeah, we could see if it was necessarily, I don't know if it was on the same agenda. It would have been probably shortly thereafter, but there may have been a couple of back and forth of a concept review, you know, a revised plan. So I could definitely try to get that information as far as the sequencing that we've done before. But again, once the concept was sort of more or less finalized-ish, you know, with Autumn Ridge, we're going through
And I
Carp C as
understand that,
well.
again, I want to make sure that we don't lose the comments that I made at the beginning, is that let's pay attention to what's going to happen in the future out there with the other properties that are out there. And we seem to be just brushing over that. And I want to make sure we don't do that, because it's going to come back. They always do.
Yeah, we can certainly bring that discussion to a future meeting, and, you know, if there's any other information, you know, if you want to see, you know, any changes maybe that Veridian might make to a concept plan, or, you know, it's up to you all if you want to, you know, wait on this resolution, and I guess we would just want to clarify what information or discussion you would like to have prior to adopting that, so we can be prepared.
You guys, if you people have any comments? Anybody?
What happens if we go through this and the project doesn't happen?
So as Brian mentioned, the village at any time can request that this application stop through the CARPC process, so it's not just a ball rolling down a hill, but we could just withdraw our application.
All right, so maybe I don't understand Carp C complete, well, I don't, but, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna be truthful. The final approvals don't come until after we have a plat, a final plat. So that's when the final approvals from Carp C come through. Or is that true or not? Or is that,
They
where
need
I'm
to have
going
a
with this
fully
is you keep on
platted.
saying we got Carp C. 6 to 8, 9 months. This may not happen right away. This may not happen for 2 years.
There's a lot of detail that is needed, and I haven't been the one actually preparing all of the maps. I mean, Brian probably has more experience with that than I do, but there's a lot of detail that's needed, right, as far as units and
Yeah,
stormwater plan.
yeah, what CARP C is gonna be looking at are kind of three key components. The overall community systems, so capacity, making sure that there's downstream capacity for any proposed development. They're gonna wanna know what's being proposed for the development, so that they can run those numbers roughly, recognizing this is kind of a parallel course, where it's being, the plan for the neighborhood's being reviewed by the village at the same time the plan for the extension for CARP C is being talked about. And then the third piece is going to be the environmental components, making sure that the stormwater management's done correctly, that the buffers and all the requirements that they have for their environmental corridor review is being done correctly. So there's kind of those three components go into what CARP C is looking at before they are then approving an extension of urban services. It is a process we've done numerous times, Verona being most recent with the Arden, so the Arden Glen neighborhood, Madison does them as well. One of the things that CARP C kind of works on a set schedule. So their schedule isn't monthly meetings, they're quarterly inputs. So it's kind of feeding into a timeline on their review time with the goal of, again, everything coming back together when it gets approved at the end.
So Brian, how does some of the things that we've talked about tonight, asking you to take a look at your plan, how does that sort of influence the process that might potentially make changes conceptually that you go to CARP C with? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so as Elise said, there's gonna be some give and take. CARP C will look at the plan, we'll make recommendations. We think we've got a pretty good handle on what those recommendations are going to be already in the plan, but again, there could be others, that we don't anticipate. But that's where that kind of parallel discussion starts to feed into each other, so that we're getting input from the village and making changes. We're updating the final plan set to CARP C, so that if there's changes that you wanna see in the middle of the stream, that can then get forwarded over to the CARP C application for their review as well, so that it all kind of comes back at the end. But, Yeah, their goal is a little different lens than looking at the street network and the uses per se, but they're looking more at kind of that sewer capacity component and projection of future use for the sewer systems, and that's, again, what the urban service amendment is focused on.
And, I'm sorry, go ahead, Phil.
I just, for my clarification anyway, so Veridian typically would sign a developer's agreement, and as part of that, they would reimburse the village for all staff time spent on this, is that correct?
Yes, they've already signed what's called a cost reimbursement agreement, so all the work that's been done up until this point with staff, with our village attorney, with our planning consultant has been or will be billed to them, so this would just be a continuation of that. All this work would be under that existing cost reimbursement agreement.
So there really isn't any, there isn't a financial risk for the village to go ahead with this.
Correct.
Okay, one question for Lauren, and I'm sure you looked at this already. You're coming up the Peterson Trail with the force main out of the lift station. So the interceptor up there is big enough to handle this, correct?
So what we have right there, right now in that area is an 8-inch main, which is our kind of standard residential main. I think as Brian alluded to earlier, we don't have the answer to that, but they will be required to prove that it has the capacity before it is approved by us.
So that main comes down through, I'm envisioning where it goes through Highlands
Correct, yep,
and eventually down somewhere down towards Jefferson Street.
yeah, it goes through kind of the Oregon Parks area,
Yes,
it
that's-
jogs,
yes.
and then it goes south and comes into the
Okay, so
interceptor.
that all was developed, hopefully with some thought process that we have future capacity. Because obviously, how else are you gonna get it down there?
Right, so the interceptor was designed, the interceptor along Jefferson Street, CC.
Oh, that would be, yes.
Yep, to my knowledge, and this predates me, the Highlands main was not put into place with this concept in mind, so it's probably always assumed that, like you've been talking, it would develop from east to west.
But then also possibly there'd be a new interceptor run along Netherwood.
Correct.
So-
That, they have looked at that, and we've had those conversations in places to serve this development with an interceptor along Netherwood. It would get to 20 to 30 feet deep, which is just not something we would want
No, we
to
don't want
deal
that.
with and service. So that's why we kind of went back and forth quite a bit with the engineer on this. And we are not fans of any more lift stations than we have to have, but after looking at this, this was by far the better technical choice if they can make it work with the
It was
capacity.
the only way, well, yes, you weren't gonna do it with a gravity flow out of that development. And eventually
Correct.
you talk, if in fact Alpine comes in and that gets developed, yes.
Yep.
Then you'll have an interceptor that goes to the north side.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying is that if in fact there's some more development that occurs with Alpine, I suspect you might have, I don't know if your interceptor would go to the back side, the north side of the property, or would it come to the south side of the property along Netherwood?
It would go to the north.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
Well, that-
it'd go to
that
the north.
answers the- So
Yep.
the big thing is you gotta make darn sure that you have capacity down through
Yeah.
Oregon Parks.
Yep, correct.
Okay, all right.
So it doesn't seem like this is anything out of the ordinary, maybe an agenda sort of thing from 1 month to the next that has been done a couple of years ago.
I think it's a little premature, but I'm just gonna chime in, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna chime in.
that's
But
fine.
that, I think it's premature, but you folks, go ahead. I'll listen to the rest of the group and what you guys suggest.
One other consideration to maybe take into account is that by going through this process now, it doesn't commit the village to anything. What it essentially does is get CARPC, this third party, out of the way of the village having that control to kind of implement what it wants. This property isn't annexed, and that's kind of the ultimate trump card here. So you go through this process, the project doesn't work out. Now this is in the urban service area, and provided future development is something that, that this commission and that the village board likes, now you don't have to step through that CARPC hoop again.
That makes sense.
Was just, well, I think if there was something that was down the road was significantly different, maybe more dense, higher demand or some significantly different design than what was proposed when the urban service area was amended, CARPC might, I'm not sure, cause I've never been through that process, they might have some power to say, hey, wait a second, we wanna look at this again and make sure this is still okay, but
Well, would they?
I'm
They
not
would-
sure, yeah,
they
what
wouldn't
that
because
process
we
looks
already have
like.
their
if-
approval, so that'd be falling back on Lauren's problem. That'd be on your plate.
Right,
Yes.
but ultimately, it's in our best interest to make sure we're not creating problems for ourselves or neighbors either.
Exactly.
And obviously, we're beholden to a lot of our own requirements and county, state requirements as well.
This doesn't seem to commit us to anything ultimately, and I think getting CARPC's input sooner rather than later has a lot of advantage in the whole process.
That's where I was going with this, because again, this to me is maybe committing us to something, but if it's not,
Right, and there could be, again, changes that CARPC suggests and getting those earlier in the process will help, the plan that's being presented in front of the village, get revised sooner and, be ultimately more accurate to maybe what, the final plan looks like.
I will make a motion to approve resolution number 26-03, recommending urban service area amendment.
Second.
we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. That passes. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Move on then to 6C for discussion only, continuing conversation regarding potential zoning text amendments, accessory building units, ADUs.
Okay, switching gears. So this has been an ongoing discussion here at Planning Commission, as you all know, working on a potential zoning text amendment to our zoning code for accessory dwelling units, AKA tiny houses, granny flats, all of that. So I've been working with Sonia on this. We did have some discussions with Larry Konopacki, our village attorney, about some of his recommendations about how to handle certain topics, so I can talk through that. But the updated sections are highlighted in yellow, so Rich, if you wanna maybe just scroll down to the first one, owner occupancy. I know this is something that we talked about quite a bit at the last meeting. You all not necessarily wanting to see these units or these properties that have ADUs become something where both units are rented, sort of a duplex type situation. And as you all know, with fair housing laws, just federal housing laws, if we're reviewing, let's say, a neighborhood, for example, the village cannot say, we're only gonna approve this if these are gonna be owner occupied homes, or we're only gonna approve these if these are gonna be rented. It's a point of information that we can ask about and a developer can share, but we can't make decisions based on or say, we're not gonna approve your change unless you only do an owner occupied project or something like that. So in a similar vein, Larry really cautioned us to either remove language about owner occupancy or what's kind of in that lower paragraph there. He said he would be open to exploring that if that's something that we wanted, where on a case-by-case basis, there could be a restrictive covenant between the property owner and, so say, the village, recorded, and basically something that ties, kind of like a conditional use permit in a way, it's tied to that property, and says, for example, this property needs to be your primary residence for at least 10, just throwing out a number, 10 months of the year. If a owner wants to agree to that, put that restriction on, I'm not sure, maybe either the primary residence or the ADU, we could do that. Again, at this point, I'm not anticipating this being a large scale effort. It's very expensive to build these at this point. So I can't anticipate a lot of people are gonna say, wow, here's a way for me to rent my house and build this other unit and have these both be rented. And I guess, again, if they were both rented, is that something, whether it's short-term or long-term, we have a lot of duplexes and things like that within the village already. Is that necessarily a bad thing? It's just maybe not how we're envisioning these being used. I don't think that would be a primary reason somebody would build one of these, but worth discussing, and I guess, I don't know if you wanna have me go through all of these and then just do questions, or do you wanna just take them one by one and discuss, Greg?
Go ahead, fellas. And ma'am.
Do you want me to just keep going through all the changes and then,
I don't know, Phil, what do you think about that?
You know, I was certainly was one that was concerned about the owner occupied issue, but I think, at least this point is a good one, is we're not gonna get a flood of these. In fact, I think most of them are gonna be, somebody's gonna build it for their parents or,
Yes.
you know,
You're right, it's not gonna be a flood, we're not gonna deal with a lot of
Yeah.
this, and, yeah,
and we can always change the ordinance later, right?
true,
right?
very true.
Yeah, one thing Larry brought up is, let's say now somebody wants to build this and have their, parent live there, adult child or something like that. Eventually, the property is gonna change hands, right? Somebody's gonna, there's gonna be a listing for a home that has a ADU in the back, and whether or not somebody might have, family situation or something like that and say, oh, that would be a great, fit for my family situation, or they might say, hey, here's an opportunity to buy a piece of property where I could rent, maybe one or both of these units out. That's a possibility too, right? We gotta think about kind of the second generation turnover of some of these properties. Again, I don't think we're going to see anytime soon a lot of these exist. And I guess just thinking about, again, how is this really different? I mean, there's been a lot of communities that have gotten rid of like single family zoning, for example, and they allow, in Minneapolis, for example, they allow duplexes and I think even triplexes on anywhere where single family homes kind of used to be restricted to. So if there were some properties that had 2 dwelling units on them within a single family neighborhood, and again, it's done at the scale that we've described, it's, I guess, what would that look like? Is that something that we're comfortable with?
Lisa, you hit on something that rang with me, and that is the next generation and the generation after. For that reason, I think that it is important for us to put a restriction for a homeowner to live in a primary residence. Because if I am a savvy person, I could buy one of these and all of a sudden, instead of having one place to rent, I have 2. And I don't have to live there. So I would prefer to have a primary residence with a secondary being able to be rented out.
And again,
We don't require that for a duplex though.
Yeah.
But a duplex is on a lot that's zoned for a duplex.
Correct.
And this way, people are
point.
kinda
Good point.
taking a single-family neighborhood and creating duplexes through the back door.
Correct.
You're right.
And that does worry me. There's also a fairly large nationwide trend, institutional investors are buying smaller, more affordable, single-family homes, permanently making them into rentals, and it's taking a lot of the for sale inventory away from would-be first-time buyers. And, this would be another back door for them to come in and create duplexes where they otherwise couldn't.
Right.
right, they might be some of the only ones that have the resources to build
Right.
something like that.
Right.
Then you would have a place for 2 people to live that's lower cost than people have now buying that house. But
Yeah,
I struggle a little bit with having that owner occupancy requirement because I wanna know, I struggle with making people pay. I assume there's probably cost and fees and things to register this. There's probably village time to be able to keep track of it. I worry a little bit about those parts of it as well. Especially if we're only expecting a few people to do it. And if all of a sudden you have 2 duplexes in a single family house because somebody does come in and buy it, but there is that other opportunity, I struggle a little bit with the owner occupancy part personally, but.
So if you have two tenants living on this property and they're both good tenants and like good neighbors to everybody, do we care? Like, this is an enforcement thing, right? We're gonna enforce it based on complaints, I think.
Yeah.
Like, we're not driving around looking for people that are parked in front of the same house for 10 months a year. But
Right.
if we wanna look at like short-term rentals as a village, these would fall under that same, like the Airbnb type ordinance that I don't think we have right now. But if
Yeah.
we develop that could apply to this as well.
Right, yeah, Larry mentioned if we're gonna kind of talk about short-term rentals, that would, I think we kind of talked about this last time, that would apply to all properties within the village. There's nowhere, and it wouldn't really stand up in court that ADUs are treated separately or differently for short-term rentals than any other property within the village. As far as the owner occupancy, just to clarify too, John and Scott, you were making these comments, would you still be open to the property owner being able to live in either the smaller unit or the larger unit, but as long as they're living in either unit, whatever the majority of the year, 10 months of the year, 6 months of the year, it doesn't matter which dwelling unit they would be in, right? Like say you want to downsize, but hey, I'm gonna rent out the house, the larger house, and I'm gonna be in the backyard cottage. Is that something you're open to?
I am. And I think that I have less of a concern if this is being rented out long-term lease aspect rather than short-term rentals. Because if it is a two rental occupancy thing and it's an Airbnb, for instance, where you're renting it for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, you really don't have control over that, much less the approval process, than if you rent it out long-term. So my mind goes to, look, let's have somebody on site that lives there. You're an owner, sort of occupied landlord. You have better control over what's going on than you do if you allow it to be two rental units that you don't necessarily have control over as a village.
Okay. And keep going through the issues. One thing I was thinking is it might actually be helpful if we have Larry come to one of our planning commission meetings, because
Yeah.
he's very good, and also just that way I don't have to keep playing monkey in the middle, and I want to make sure that if there are other questions that I'm one, portraying them correctly, but two, he's getting us answers, and it might be more efficient. So we'll keep marching through some of the changes, and that way I can kind of work with him on just being prepared to discuss.
One comment, I'm sorry to
Topics.
interrupt, one comment I have about the 10-month period. You might have a situation where obviously some people, they want to be there for 6 months or 5 months and 30 days. So they can, live in Florida
Yeah,
for the other.
yeah.
So I don't know where the 10th month came from.
Yeah, I think that was just example language for maybe a different community, but yeah,
Okay.
other places have done 6 months, or where you,
Okay.
where's your residency, place of
primary
residency, where you
yeah.
register to vote, things like
Okay.
that. Again, enforcement, it's a little cloudy. I think the process we've been kind of talking about is obviously there's a building permit, but kind of a administrative, like a zoning type permit to get an ADU, and that has some of these checks, maybe potentially some architecture review, things like that. So we would have all the ADUs kind of registered. And so if there was some kind of agreement they needed to sign, we'd probably have like a template that was created. And then, this is the requirement. You need to live in one of the two dwelling units at least 6 months of the year, whatever it is. Sign it, it gets recorded. Yeah, there's some kind of fee associated with it. I don't think it would be too onerous. Maybe a few $100s maybe recorded at the county or something like that, but cover some staff time. But that's maybe how that could work. So, but helpful comments. I think we still have to kind of refine what that can look like. I know, again, the world of short-term rentals is changing rapidly at the state. There's a lot of, I just did a webinar this past week was about kind of all the different cases in Wisconsin, how they relate to planning and zoning, and I think 2/3 of the cases were related to short-term rentals. So there's a lot of case law that's getting created as we speak about dealing with these. So we're not the only community talking about it. Size, so last time we talked about, we want to make sure we don't have, a small ranch house with an equal-sized ADU in the back. So one thing Sonia said she's seen set that 75% number in other communities, so up to 1,200 square feet, but never larger than 75% of the total square footage of the principal structure. I think one thing we talked about too was, again, the 1,200 cap, making sure that we don't have, hey, you can build up to 75% of the structure, but you have a McMansion and you've got a 3,000 square foot ADU in the back. That's not what these are about. So
1,200, is that a number that's common throughout the other communities that have this, or?
she said that's actually pretty high.
It seems high to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that
high,
would
so
be.
that you guys would be on the higher side as far as Dane County, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we're trying to build in some flexibility, but she said usually 800 to 1,000 is more what's seen.
That seems more reasonable to me. I mean, a standard old-fashioned two-bedroom apartment is $750 to 900 range, and are we trying to let people build entire,
My first
larger
house-
residences in the back? I
my-
mean,
yeah,
this is supposed to be an
my first house,
accessory.
yeah, my first house in Oregon was less than 1,200 square feet.
Yeah,
And it was a
12 seems high. to me.
three-bedroom house, you know.
Yeah,
So what if we cap it at 1,000? Assuming that there's some stair
There
in
you
there
go.
or something.
And the
like that.
75% of
And so,
the
right,
main
right,
structure.
right,
and
right.
It
That's a good
certainly
idea.
would need some guidance on
Good
how
idea.
that footprint is calculated. Does that include the garage? And because people will play numbers games with, here's
Sure.
my house and my garage and my porch, and I get 75% of all of that, or do I get
right.
75%
Maybe, is
of
it
the
living,
living area?
living
or-
area?
You would have to be very specific about all of that, or it'll
Yeah,
become
okay.
a game.
Okay. Next section, okay, so the design review, we've kind of gone back and forth on this a little bit, so, I think last time we talked about, okay, let's just have it be like an administrative staff review, and you guys gave some direction that, oh, we're okay if it's just consistent with some of the design within the neighborhood and not necessarily on that site. Larry was actually kind of cautious, he said, I don't wanna put staff in a position where you're making a subjective call, and then that is questioned, or, say, I'm not in this role one day and somebody else is reviewing, or I'm on leave for a couple months or something, somebody else is reviewing, they may have a different way that they kind of review that, or their internal standards, and so, again, just, he's always thinking about trying to protect the village and trying to protect staff from somebody saying you're being inconsistent with your review, or I think this is consistent, you didn't approve it, or whatever, so, this is kind of, again, we can talk about this if and when I can get Larry here, but, so we wrote, best practices advise ADU design state administrative level, just, like signage and things like that, but, that we can look into, either removing design standards altogether, we're kind of, again, leaving it up to just the market, what people wanna do, just like they design their single-family houses now, however they might want to, if they're not in an HOA. Or, and just keeping, placement, size, whatever, I guess, elements you guys care about, making sure that that's included in the ordinance. So it's pretty cut and dry, yep, you meet all these requirements, we could say, maybe certain materials aren't allowed, maybe metal siding or things like that aren't allowed, so it's very clear. Another thing Larry suggested is if you guys do wanna see these and you really wanna get into, is this consistent with the neighborhood? We could bring it kind of back to our original idea, conversation, we could bring it to planning commission. And again, I don't think we're gonna get flooded with these, but it's another cost and review and time process for somebody to get through this, but, that's, I guess, a decision you all wanna make. Do you wanna move to some more objective design standards that are really clear to administer, or do you wanna say, it's gonna be a policy decision, these are the things we're gonna look at, but you're gonna have to come to the planning commission for basically like a site plan review for these, so opening that up for conversation.
I like the idea of, the mechanics of it, the site plan coming here. I don't think it's gonna extend our meetings to hours on end, that there's gonna be that many of them. From a design standpoint, I don't think we really need to get too deep in the weeds on what kind of siding or what color they're doing, or if they wanna put an addition on the back of their house, we don't have control over any of that. If they wanna build this, why does it have to be different? But how is this sited, on your site with your house? How are you gonna provide utilities to it? How are you gonna provide for water and sewer and the basic sanitation? Are things that need to be scrutinized a little bit, and I think having them bring that component of it here,
Yeah.
so we can see how it fits the site and how it maybe affects the neighbors, or, drainage and, things that will affect the neighborhood and the immediate neighbors is really what our biggest concern should be. The people that are doing it on their site, they're building their own little thing or whatever, but how does it affect the people right next door who thought they lived in a single-family neighborhood, and now they effectively have a duplex next door to them,
Yeah, I think, I hear you, I think it's just, we need to be careful about, again, if there's something that's coming to planning commission, if they are just objective, are you meeting this requirement, are you connected to utilities? I guess, why are they here? Because if they meet all the requirements, they're gonna get approved. Is it more just, you wanna know where these are, you know, being built? Are there other things like, again, site drainage or something like that, that, can we create some kind of standard so that, again, there's an assurance, if somebody's gonna put in all the time and money to design something, they wanna know that, okay, if I meet all these requirements, it's gonna get approved before I put in all that time and effort. The other thing I was gonna say is the building permit process is often looking through, some of that stuff about, and we can maybe build that into the process too, about, you need to create a site plan and maybe it gets reviewed by Public Works and zoning as well as building, before it gets to building inspection, but is it connected, properly? Is it meeting setbacks? Those are things that, the building inspectors are already checking
Right, you
for
can do that,
somebody
but-
building a shed or
We
something
do
like
that
that.
on commercial sites and,
Yeah.
staff and building inspectors review that as well, but,
Mhm.
the plan commission reviews those cases and looks at those things. They're given a list, you need to have all this accounted for,
Right.
because they're gonna ask.
Right, yeah,
Right.
but you guys aren't right now looking at individual single and two-family dwelling
but again,
units,
this is
so
this
is
is
this
a-
different?
Kind of a unique situation, and the thing with doing it, otherwise, if you wanna start making standards, we're gonna sit here all night making new, what about this, what about that? There's just so much stuff you can write down and expect.
Every
Maybe,
site's different, so.
right,
Right.
maybe you can rely on building inspector, and that's one of the thoughts I had, but then now you're burdening them down with some things that
Right.
maybe they're not,
They're looking
Yeah.
at code issues.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Circulation issues.
I prefer not to have a whole lot of language that says, here's what you gotta do, some of it, some guidance, but not an overabundance of it.
Right,
That's my only,
yeah,
I'm kind of
Input.
going, I'm swinging the other side.
Are you?
And the reason being, the intention of not coming to plan commission was part of the cost and the approval process and time. So I am of the mind, I would rather have generic sort of encompassing language that said to match accessory building or primary structure or whatever, which is easy to just kind of go, yeah, ish, you're good. All of those sorts of things that the building inspection, I agree with you, Elise, I think that having that sort of process where it needs to go to the zoning administrator, the building inspector, so that there is some overlap and cross-referencing between staff, is enough. Instead of coming in here and making sometimes people really uncomfortable to have to go through that process. I'm more of the mind of keeping the guidelines generic and letting staff just kind of roll with it.
maybe you're right, cause I guess maybe I was getting to the thought where we're gonna get really detailed, and maybe the generic stuff, that would make, what he's saying, it makes more sense. And then you can handle it with staff, you can handle it with your building inspectors and your mechanical inspectors.
Can we just say that staff has the option to take it to planning commission?
That's true.
If they're
That's
not
what I
comfortable
thought.
making a
yeah, that was
decision?
one thing Larry said, is if it was kind of a, I don't know, somebody wants to design an ADU that looks like a spaceship or something in the back, I don't think this is appropriate, maybe if there's some pushback from the property owner, okay, you have the option to bring this to planning commission, and then we can do that site plan review for, with you guys.
I'll withdraw my concerns.
No, I think it's all good conversation, this is,
Okay.
because we have to kind of think about, do we wanna just treat these kind of like we do any other accessory dwelling unit?
Yeah.
But, there's, as Scott brought up, there's other issues with, sheds don't have utilities and things like that too, or maybe a driveway, and so I think this is gonna be, as we keep saying, we can always revise as we go, if we get these and are running into issues, we realize we need to change
So where we're going
the
here
code.
with this is that we're gonna, at this point, we're getting pretty close, and you really essentially want to have our village attorney come in and just review it with us, basically.
Yes,
that-
yeah, last change on page 20 of the packet was just, this is minor, but, just for fire safety, we're gonna recommend that there's a building separation of at least 10 feet between the
Yeah,
principal structure and the ADU on the site, so they're not, too close to each other. I'm sure our fire department would be recommending that anyway. we'll check Larry's schedule. I think he said he is gonna be on a trip, during our April planning commission meeting, so it might be May, but that's okay, we've got other stuff to cover. But I think that probably would be good, especially the owner occupancy thing. I just wanna make sure I'm getting correct, and we can kind of talk about long-term rentals, short-term rentals, so he's really good. He works for a lot of other communities too, and so he's very up to date on, what's kind of currently going on, and
The only comment I would make on that 10-foot separation, which I'm in support of, is it should align with the zoning code that allows for cornices or eave overhangs to extend into that 10 feet.
Intrusions.
Yep. Yeah, it's just measured at the walls, not at the, yeah, I'm
Foundation.
always explaining that to people. So any other, I guess, thoughts or changes or things you wanna, get further information about related to this, just for when we pick it up again?
I think we're narrowing it down pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
really think
hopefully, maybe it's May, we have Larry back here, and then we'll get some direction from him. Hopefully we can kind of finalize some of these outstanding questions, and then during the summer, we can work on getting the public hearing scheduled once we actually get some language drafted. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for new business? Nothing? Communication miscellaneous business, status of public and private development projects.
All right, so I've been trying to make a list here, so I hit on everything because we've had a busy February. So starting with some ongoing projects, there are 2 wells still going, well 3 and well 6. Hopefully this is the last time I have to mention at least one of them. Well 3 is still scheduled for commissioning in March. I know that we got permanent power there today, so that's a huge step, and everything looks like it's on schedule. Well 6 also scheduled for commissioning in late March, early April, so hoping to wrap that one up this month, realistically, knowing that it could go a little bit later, but we are very, very close. Wastewater treatment plant, that's gonna continue to just go until mid-2027, so on schedule, on budget, going pretty well. Richards Road Lift Station, that is now been pushed up from starting construction in the fall to likely sometime in midsummer, we've been told by the contractor, but they have not submitted any kind of schedule to us. So that has not been approved at this time. That said, I wouldn't be surprised to see it starting earlier than expected. So in new projects that you'll see this year, the senior center is starting next week. They already have their porta potty, so I guess officially it's already started. The contractor for that, Portson, is very excited to get going. So should start to see a lot of activity out in that area really in the next couple of weeks. Gary Dish Park, that bid was awarded to Speedway Sand and Gravel, and that will be starting in May. The Park Street, Waterman Street intersection right there by the senior center, the reconstruction of that intersection, also a Speedway Sand and Gravel project, also awarded, likely to start in May or June. The intersection here at Alpine and County Highway CC was awarded to Rock Road Companies. They're a construction firm out of the south, I believe, Elkhorn or Beloit area. Well-known down there. They seem to be starting to kind of break into the market via us up here, but well-respected where they do work. That will be starting in May or June and run through the summer. East Lincoln Street between North Main Street and North Perry Parkway. That project, that reconstruction project is being managed by WISDOT. It is a full street reconstruction with utility replacement. We don't have word yet on a construction schedule from them, but given the size and scope of it, I would anticipate that will likely be starting in May or June and running through the summer. Obviously, quite a heavy school coordination component to that one, so that was written into the contract, and we will be working with them closely to make sure we're phasing it in a way that works for the school district. One last project that is not being constructed this year, it is in design, but probably interesting to this group, the Bethel Greenacre Park Improvements Project. So we did award a master planning and design proposal to JT Engineering here in town. That was after a competitive RFP process. They had a really exciting, really passionate proposal for this project, so we're really excited about that one. We're gonna kick that off next week, and then we're gonna move straight into public outreach, starting with some targeted focus groups, and then moving towards a broader effort to get the neighborhood involved. On the private side, Greenview Preserve Phase 4 continues to be kind of the first one out of the gate. The village engineer has approved those plans. They've now been sent off to the DNR for permitting, and we expect that that will probably start here in the late spring, early summer. The Highlands of Netherwood, Phases 4 and 5, part of Phase 4 and all of Phase 5 still remain to be done. We have been in discussions with FDG, the developer out there. They are moving closer, I think, to having a plan to getting those wrapped up. So very likely, actually almost certainly in some way or another, going to see the Phase 4 part of that wrapped up this year. And then Phase 5, they're hoping to get it done this year. They're working very closely with Lennar on that actually. But like I said, nothing set in stone yet. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Upcoming Plan Commission meetings. I'd note again, April is gonna be a week late, and I'm curious about this, the joint meeting with the village board back in, that's the May 7th, that has to do with the Old Village Hall?
Yes, so we've been working with JSD Professional Services out of Verona to do some due diligence on Village Hall prior to doing an RFP to essentially sell the property. We figured that anybody who would wanna get into that building probably wants to know what they're getting themselves into. So they've been doing analysis of all of the, mechanical systems that are there, kind of the condition of those, age of those, and pictures. Last week, I think the week prior, they did a Phase 2 environmental, so mold, asbestos, some of those materials were tested. I think we haven't gotten the results back from that, so work on that. And then they also, part of their contract was doing some conceptual planning, somewhat similar to what the downtown plan looked at, but kind of taking a step further. If the village were to sell or redevelop Village Hall, what would that actually look like as far as the parcel Village Hall is on also includes all of Triangle Park, all the parking, the alleyway. So what piece of land are we actually talking about? How would that tie in with plans for maybe changes to Triangle Park and parking and circulation? And so I think some really interesting ideas, but we figured it'd be most efficient to have that report presented to both you guys at Village Board all at one time. It'll probably just be for discussion only at that point, just presentation, and then let you all sit with it. But kind of refining what do we actually mean by saving Village Hall? What does that entail? Are we open to kind of a range of possibilities, or I guess kind of what does that really mean? So we'll talk about that in May. That's what we're aiming for.
All right, thank you. Again, the item C, the Plan Commission, or the Planning Staff Meeting Agenda, which is February 11th. We keep on referring to it, that's in past tense.
So I'm just including, this was something that Mike Grace did, but the planning staff meetings we have with developers, we had one this morning. I'm including, I don't usually know what's on those agendas until a couple days before, so I'm just including it as FYI. That's usually a preview of some projects that might be coming
All
up.
right, so it's really revealed, so letting us look back and see what it was.
Yep, if you had
And
any
like you
questions
said,
about,
Okay, thank you, then
Yep.
we'll continue with
if
that.
you don't want me to include
Okay.
them, I don't have to, but happy to continue to have them in the packet.
And I'm waiting for this. Without objection, the meeting is adjourned.